what Sikh history truly is, it's eye-opening in that it's like we've learned the wrong things our entire life.
The killings happening outside of India as well.
Yeah.
And, Kandabaiji from UK, what is your take on that?
I think this is not surprising. I think coming to the West, we view the idea of life and death a lot differently.
That being
Yeah.
said, I was like, we shouldn't be scared of saying Khalistan. All right. Hello, good afternoon. Oh, well, it's good morning for you, correct?
It's good morning for me. Yes, it is.
Well, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. I want to
Thank you.
first go off. What is your morning routine like?
Oh, morning routine is very random with a baby. So it depends. You might have, a block of 4 or 5 hours of sleep. You might only get an hour at a time. So it's pretty random for now. But prior to that, it was wake up early in the morning, gym, work, come back. So yeah, everything's shifted since we had a baby.
Oh, I'm definitely gonna dig into that, but
Yeah.
I want to go back and tell me a little bit about yourself, introduce the audience. I know we connected because of your Instagram, Free Ob. You're the face behind this public page.
Yeah. Yeah. So Free Punjab is the page. Um, and I think if we background is really not that interesting. I I'm an educator by profession. I have a doctorate degree in educational leadership, so that was the kind of career path that I'm pursuing right now. Um, yeah, so I've been working as a special educator for 11 years now, so it's been quite a while. I'm also a realtor. So I'm doing a bunch of things. I'm running a page, and I'm involved with, you know, gurdwaras. There's rallies coming up that I'm involved in, so kind of all over the place.
Wow. So what made you pursue education and OE master? So,
Yeah. So my mom is an educator. My grandpa on my mom's side was a principal in Punjab.
okay.
So yeah, I guess maybe it just runs in our blood. I I originally did not have any intent of going into that. I was in business. I was in the tech world prior to transitioning to this, but probably about a year into it, I decided that this is not the route for me. This is not entertaining me. This is not kind of fulfilling what I see to be the next 30 to 40 years of my life. So I took it a different direction.
So you said you are also niching down to special ed, correct?
Yes. Yeah. I'm working with students that have severe emotional behavioral disorders.
Hmm.
So a lot of the students that end up in our incarceration systems that have a lot of trouble with authority often come from very traumatic backgrounds. So I've been kind of found that niche, and I can connect with them. I build rapport with them really well, and based on that rapport, they respond to the direction. It's not always smooth sailing, but um, I think generally I've seen a lot of success in this area.
So I would actually correlate that with your page because you're really educating the audience about what we went through traumatic wise and educating the general public of what we are and who we are. So where did this page start or what got you really into doing that?
Yeah, so a lot of my family background is in this.
Hmm.
A lot of my upbringing is in kind of social awareness. And that's really, I would say, along with education, is really my passion. It's something that I do, just on a volunteer basis. I'm not getting paid for it in any way. So it's, yeah, my family, few generations back, was from Pakistan. And then they drew the line, well, present day Pakistan. Back then it was just Punjab. And then they migrated over, and then they built up. They struggled for a long while. And then 84, I have family members that were involved in the armed struggle as well. Um, and yeah, so we migrated out of Punjab basically on asylum.
Mm.
So this issue has been very near and dear to me my entire life. So I think a lot of our community is, if you weren't directly affected by it, it's almost out of sight, out of mind.
Hmm.
And I think it's really important to remind folks that this is larger than a person. This is a community issue. And furthermore, since we failed to acknowledge and deal with it, this kind of genocidal tendency of the Indian state has kind of carried over across generations, whereas now we're seeing assassinations of Sikhs, internationally, where we're seeing major suppression of Sikhs in Punjab. So I think just witnessing everything and being a part of the movement is comes natural to me, and that's why I think I was passionate about it.
I love that. We have a lot in common. My mom is a also a Mastani back in days, and
Uh,
so here I am. I'm teaching something. I'm teaching aesthetics, but the passion of teaching definitely comes. And same thing. My Mamaji was involved in the 1984 attack, and we were here because of that, and that really led to me, starting this podcast and connecting with more people that have gone through that and are more active as well.
yeah,
I love that you really break it down and educate even us, first, second generation in that have sort of lost our touch, what really happened. We sort of exactly what you said, blind eye, we're not there, we don't go back as often. How do you how can we become more active or how can we get more involved even though we're back here, away, but how do we still get more involved or how can we get more awareness, I guess, too? Because I know your
yeah,
platform does that already, but
yeah. I think the primary step would be to kind of reclaim the narrative.
mm,
Our story has constantly been told by those that seek to oppress us, to eliminate us, to kind of subjugate us. Our story has historically been written that way. So when it comes to finding out about what Sikh history truly is, it's eye-opening in that it's like we've learned the wrong things our entire life, or at least the last generation has. This generation is unraveling that propaganda a little bit.
I agree.
So I think reclaiming that narrative and understanding the history that Sikhs truly are, why they will always be a target to those that seek to control, to exploit. Whether it was the Mughals, whether it was the British, and now it's on to the Indian state, Sikhs will continuously be a target because Sikhs stand with, justice. They stand for equality, and our concepts of Sarbat da Pala seek to kind of enrich everything that exists, whether it's the environment, whether it's the people, whether it's the water, whether it's the air. This is the idea that Sikhi is. And so when you have oppressive forces that seek to control, you know that it's going to be the Sikhs that stand in your way.
Mhm.
So eliminating us has always been in the oppressor's best interest. Our numbers dwindled down to the thousands when the Mughals were around, when Sikhs were just existing in jungles, and even then, like unable to kind of stray away from their message of justice. Even then, they would run from the jungles when it would hit midnight, and they would rescue the women being kidnapped and deliver them back to their homes, and then retreat back to the jungles. So our lineage is so rich with that, and which is why when it comes to now, when we talk about 1984, the attack on the Bar Sahib, when we talk about the entire tumultuous period after, it comes into being because Sikhs will just not cease in their pursuit of justice, and it will never be the case whether there's a million of us or whether there's one of us.
Yeah. And you mentioned about, you know, um, the killings happening outside of India as well.
Yeah,
And, Kandabaiji from UK, that has been an interesting. What is your take on that? Being outside, we come to asylum, we come out and hoping we have protection, we can continue raising our voices, but these killings are still happening. We have that happen in Canada as well. And yeah, these things are still happening and
yeah,
they're being I would say ignored, you know? They're not really, but slowly we're bringing it to the surface.
Sure. Yeah. I think when it comes to geopolitics and when it comes to financial alliances, most countries see a financial opportunity in India, therefore are willing to ignore kind of who they are and what their human rights abuses are. I
Mm.
mean, the prime minister of that country was banned from coming to almost all Western countries for a decade
Mm.
because of his human rights violences. And he is now the prime minister, so he's allowed back in, and he's given hugs and he's given these grand welcomes. And I think that is kind of the way of the world. But anyone that is raising their voice, I think if you're especially a proponent for the sovereignty of Sikhs, for Khalistan, you constantly walk around with a target on your head. And I think that's something that at least I've come to terms with, is that, life, I mean, we're going to go anyway. And if we can go in a way that, honors our heritage, our lineage, then that I think is a worthy way to go. So I think anyone that, is on this path, you understand that you are a target of the Indian state. And how big of a target usually depends on the amount of impact you make. So if you're raising awareness, they'll silence your posts. They'll call you a terrorist. They'll give you death threats. If you go further than that, then they may put you on a hit list. And if that hit list is successful, then you'll be out. So I think this is not surprising. I think coming to the West, we view the idea of life and death a lot differently.
Mm.
But when we view the idea of life and death from a Sikh perspective, we come to understand that death has never meant the end.
Mm.
And in reality, when we say Sat Sri Akal, we say truth is the highest. So, in that regard, truth is higher than life itself.
Mm.
So, if you are to be, a sacrifice in that pursuit of justice and that pursuit of righteousness, then it's a worthy sacrifice. And I think that's something that Sikhs should definitely, again, when it comes to reclaiming narrative, I think that's a narrative that we definitely need to grasp once again.
Mm. Have you experienced that? Because you have a very active voice in the community. I'm sure there's been views on you as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, I say it pretty regularly, like, buy your insurance policies, buy your life insurance policies, understand that this could be an outcome. Um, Death threats are pretty regular. The FBI has approached and said, whoever's given these death threats, hand them over to us, and then we'll pursue it. But you never really find out what happens with that. So I think in cases like in the UK where Avtar Singh Kanda was poisoned, um, I mean, the UK is so deeply entrenched with creating a financial alliance with India that, I mean, there's a UK citizen in an Indian jail who was beaten, electrocuted, tortured, remains in an Indian jail, and they're completely silent on it, aside from a very specific few members of parliament. So I think this is going to be the way of the world, but I mean, when it comes to oppression, when it comes to opposition and those that seek to eliminate Sikhs, we've seen worse. And we've seen mass killings, and we've seen again our numbers dwindle down to very few where we were existing in jungles, and we've come back from that point to establish a sovereign state. And where we are today is nothing compared to those circumstances. So viewing your history and gaining inspiration from it and gaining direction from it.
That's beautiful. That now direction, I want to lead to Amritpal. Like he is causing some ruckus back home. So what
Yeah.
is your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, last I talked to him, he was in Dubai and he was supposed to come here to California. And at the airport, he made up his mind to go to Punjab. And that was kind of the end. It wasn't a calculated decision on his part.
Uh-huh.
Um, as far as my knowledge. Um, he's causing a ruckus because he's saying exactly what we're saying, except he's saying it there. And he, by the grace of God, has the ability to be persuasive and to respond. He can recall facts at a very um, kind of swift pace.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to talking to him about a topic, he has a lot going on in his mind. And this isn't the first time he's done this. The Indian government wants to be like, oh, they've Pakistan's been working on creating this guy for so long. I mean, the decades old boogeyman, kill two birds with one stone, malign Sikhs and malign Pakistan at the same time. Like, I don't understand how big Pakistan truly is to create this type of movement in India, but it wasn't Pakistan that killed hundreds of thousands of our people. This was the Indian government. So when Amritpal Singh is really not saying anything brand new, he's saying what we've been saying for decades, and he's saying what has gotten people historically in jail or killed. And I think the moment that you speak with so much clarity, you are going to be a problem to the Indian government. And their continuous angle with any Sikh that is speaking about sovereignty, that is speaking about their rights, will be how do we portray them as anti Hindu?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the government's propaganda tactic. It's decades old. And they understand that 80% of voters are come from a Hindu background. So if we can successfully scare them and say this guy, this tall guy with the turban is, a threat to you, then we get reelected and we justify their genocide. So even though the Hindus of Punjab turn to Sant Jarnail Singh Ji very regularly, even though the Hindus of Punjab today understand that Amritpal Singh is working for the elimination of narcotics for all of Punjab, which
Mm-hmm.
is not just Sikhs. The people understand that, but the media has to portray it in a certain way so they can put him in jail, so they can, create these mass influxes of operations where thousands of foot soldiers are going in to kind of intimidate and scare the public into silence.
Mm. So explain what would be the ideal Palestine? Because I know, well, actually, you can, I would love to share this little story. Actually, it's not my story, it's my mom's story.
Sure.
But she had shared this with me recently, and I think you would appreciate it. So she works at a school, and there's an autistic kid that loves my mom, and he knows that she's sick, and she was out of school recently. And when she came back, his instructor said that Miss D, he's been looking for you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and she said that she went to go see him after the break. It gets me into
Mm-hmm.
tears. He
Oh,
knows our whole Sikh history. He knows our whole
wow.
Sikh history. And this autistic kid, and because um he started singing Aage AK-47 wale. Mom was so blown away. She's like, "Oh my God, Munda like boli janda si uchi uchi Khalistan, Khalistan." And she was like, "I'm like मैं तो डरी पे like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
moms are." And
yeah,
I was like, Mom, that's good. I was like, they know more, that he's educated, he's learning about us. But that being
yeah,
said, I was like, we shouldn't be scared of saying Khalistan. And I was like,
yeah,
"क्यों डरते हो?" I was like,
yeah,
उन्हें he learned, he, is learning about it, whatever. But this was such a beautiful story that I was like, I have to share with you. But
yeah.
what
No,
is
that's
Khalistan? Why shouldn't we scared to be say Khalistan,
yeah.
to
I,
say it?
I think well, in your story, I'll talk about what my idea of Khalistan is, even though it's just my personal idea.
Hmm.
Um, I think the fact that our last generation is so hesitant to talk about a term that means the freedom and sovereignty of their people, that means, economic prosperity, that means religious protections, that means, their rights. The fact that they can't even mention the term is a small example of how violent the Indian state will get if you talk about your freedom.
Hmm.
And people understand that the moment you talk about Khalistan, at least definitely in Punjab, the moment you talk about it, you are a target
Hmm.
and you can be picked up at any time and they may never see you again. And this is the story. And now it's turning into almost a slur in India where if someone calls you Khalistani, people put their hands up and say, "Oh, I'm not Khalistani. I'm Indian. Why are you calling me Khalistani?" As if it's some sort of a derogatory term.
Hmm.
And I've always seen it as if you call me Indian,
Mm-hmm.
I see that as a derogatory term.
Mm-hmm.
I do not identify with India. I do not identify with the country that has and continues to subjugate my people.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are hesitant, if you think being called Khalistani is a slur, then it's your mentality that I think needs to shift. So that's one important point. And as to your second point, um, I think my idea of Khalistan is Halemi Raj. It's a concept in Bani where it's basically Raj that is based on passion is the incorrect term. Halemi means kind of like compassion. That's the right word. A Raj that's based on compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And Begumpura is another term where it's like the land without sorrow, though that seems a little mythical. But when we talk about Halemi Raj or when we talk about Khalistan, we have somewhat of a model from it from Maharaja Ranjit Singh. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very important to make this point. Sikhs spent the good part of a century fighting Mughal Raj, who have, come from a Islamic Muslim background. And when Sikh Raj is established in 1799,
Mm-hmm.
most of the population of the Sikh Raj is Muslims. And a large part of the population is Hindus, and only 6% of Maharaja Ranjit Singh's Raj is Sikhs itself. So 6% are Sikhs. You come out of a century of being subjugated by a specific religion, and you still have the clarity to say it's not the religion that is wrong. And I think when it comes to Khalistan,
Mm-hmm.
that is the idea that we need to bring forward is that even though we've spent the better part of a century being oppressed by the Indian state, who is a majority of Hindus, it is not Hindus who are to blame. So subjugating them would be anti Sikh.
Mm-hmm.
And making that point is very problematic for the Indian government because their entire narrative is based on Khalistan is bad for Hindus.
Mm-hmm.
Khalistan is scary for you. You will be unsafe, which is why systematically from 85 to 95, they had the operations like Black Cat where they would pull Hindus off buses and kill them and then blame Sikh freedom fighters to say that these people are anti-you. This
Mm-hmm.
was never a religious war. The movement for Khalistan, the movement for sovereignty and freedom is not a religious war. It is simply exercising our Path Shahidava. Path Shahidava means our Guru given sovereignty. The Guru has made us sovereign. The Guru has said that there is no law above Akal Purakh's law, which is God's law. There is no law above that. And that is the only thing that you are subservient to. Any person or any government or anything, yeah, it may align with what you believe as a Sikh, but if it doesn't, your validation will always come from the Guru. And that clarity is very important. We saw it practically come into play to some extent in Maharaja Ranjit Singh's Raj. And I think there is substantial room to improve on that, considering all the resources that we have now, the population that we have, the bright minds that we have in our community. I think, the idea of Khalistan will be intrinsic and integral to the Sikh identity and how the Sikh Panth moves forward.
Mm. Do you think Amrit Bal will push him forward?
Yeah, I mean, he'll be one.
Mm,
He'll definitely be one. And I think uh, this idea is being pushed forward in a lot of different ways, none of which are incorrect. There's the whole Sikhs for Justice are doing the Khalistan referendum, and I think that's great. There is, Amrit Pal Singh, who is on the ground in Punjab advocating. There are some intellectuals who are advocating in a different capacity. There are, journalists and newspaper kind of anchors that are advocating in a different way.
mm-hmm.
And though they may disagree with each other, I think in the end, they are all a target for India. no
Mm-hmm.
matter in which way they are advocating.
Mm-hmm.
And B, what they're talking about is basically the same aside from a few different issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is that pride, that stubbornness within us that says if someone disagrees with something that I believe in, I am against them. And the Sikh way is moving past that and thinking about sarbat and thinking about sarbat da pala, that though you may believe in Khalistan in a different way, or you may believe in the idea of Raj and Padshahi in a different way than I do, that we are all on the same page. And I think that is a transition and a leap that we need to make so that we can continue to get to our end goal. And the model that the world has kind of seen with colonization is divide and conquer.
Mm-hmm.
And the Indian state understands that, which is why if you believe that you can eat meat or not, you are put in a different subsection.
Mm-hmm.
If you believe that you need to live your life a certain way, you are put into a different subsection. And the state will do that very intentionally because they understand that to take the beast down, we need to separate it.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that we can understand that we are all going to be a target. In 84, when Indian mobs were running around looking for Sikhs, they didn't ask you what you believed in. They didn't ask you what version of Sikh you believe in, how you worship, if you do Nityanim every day. All they saw is you were a Kara and you were a target.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the way. If our oppressor views us that way, then at the very least, we need to view ourselves as one because they view us as one.
Oh
So
my
that's
God.
a leap and a reclaiming of our narrative.
I love that. That's so important. I feel like we ourselves are dividing within us, and that's not necessarily needed. We actually need to come together because we all are working on amazing things. And if we just work together, it can move the needle even further and faster if it's
Yeah,
done properly. That being said, and we were just talking about even in just my household, like we have my Nana Ji, my mom, and then me and my kids,
yeah,
and here my mom is a little bit, hesitant to say it, where my Nana Ji is like, it's gonna happen, it's happening. Look what's
yeah,
happening. He's on
yeah.
YouTube watching every day.
Yep.
Then here my son, who hasn't been back to Punjab, and literally we're just having a conversation yesterday, and he's like, can I go with Nanu to India this summer? And I'm like, let's make it happen. And then, he is here telling me, he's like, we're not Indian, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm explaining him what this means. So
Yes.
moving forward about like relationships, so I'm also a single mom, but
Yeah.
it I get more and more asked about relationships and what do you want a Gorsic? Do you want a guy with a turban?
Yeah.
And I feel like that itself is also so important. And you are in a relationship, you're a dad yourself, but have you gotten experience like that's another thing with in the dating culture in our new generation
Yeah.
that appearance and even the appearance and the look is taken, oh, you're a girl, like you must be this and that, even though they may not be doing so well, but that's another
Yeah.
topic. um
Yeah.
but what is your view on that now being in both shoes?
Yeah. I think that's a very deep topic. I'll address it as briefly as I can. I think the Western idea of relationships and dating and marriage and appearance is very different from the Sikh way of appearance and dating and marriage and this whole thing, right?
Mhm.
So when we try to align Western values with Sikh values and Punjabi values, we are going to come to a crossroads because the West believes a very specific thing. They believe that, marriage is sacred, but 50% of Western marriages end in divorce.
Mhm.
So this idea is very different in the West. And I think we need to understand who we are and where we come from. And along with that comes prioritization. It comes, what do I find important? Because I'm not just living for myself. There's a couple concepts I think that are uh, that get very muddy when it comes to aligning with Sikhi. One is happiness. The
Mhm.
the Western idea is happiness above everything. If you're not happy, that's a problem. If you're not, and I think there's a difference sometimes between happy and what is the right thing to do.
Mhm.
And what the right thing to do is not always going to make you happy, but it's the right thing to do. And the second concept, I think, is life and death. The idea of death is very different in the West. The idea of death is even if you're a vegetable, just keep them on life support so they can be alive so that we can feel that they're alive.
Mhm.
In our culture, in Sikhi and in Punjabi culture, it is, death is a part of life. You are born knowing that you are going to die. And
Mhm.
in Gurbani, it's referenced many, many times that a Gursikh lives knowing that death is always coming.
Mhm.
So you understand that need to live my life and understand that you are temporary. In Salok Mala Nawa, Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji says, Nanak thir nahi koi, that nothing is stable. The only thing that is stable is Naam, right? And meditation and Naam Abhyas. So that is the only thing that is truly going to remain at the same place. You are going to pass, your kids are going to pass, your properties, everything. All of this is kind of just a part of life, and it could be a distraction, it could be a resource for you depending on how you use it. So when it comes back, circling back to what we originally started talking about, when it comes to dating and marriage, I think the first thing that you need to do is prioritize and understand that beyond what makes me happy, what will, if I have kids in the future, what will be the best for them? What is the best for my month? If my validation is coming from, I actually am doing a talk on this at the government camp with like very little kids about validation. Because if your validation comes from your friends, if your validation comes from social media, then you will always be continuously trying to please them.
Mhm.
You will, you have to do all kinds of crazy, chaotic things on social media to get likes and views. Um, and that will is what you will be chasing. Now, if that is your priority, your validation is coming from them, it's going to be a problem. If your validation is coming from your guru, we bow down to it, right? And bowing to Guru Sahib means that you are offering yourself, your head, to your guru. Therefore, your thought is subservient. The guru's thought is superior, right? And when you live according to that and you prioritize that, I think your your priorities, your life view, the way that you approach the future will hopefully kind of grasp that and take it into account when you're moving forward. What is the best thing, not just for me, what is the best thing for Sarbat? What is the best thing for society? What is the best thing for my panth? And if you move forward with that, I think a lot of things get a lot clearer. But again, that mix between Eastern cultures and Western cultures is going to be muddy. So kind of creating that clarity is an important part of it.
I so yeah, I love those points you made. Those are so valid. I think you definitely need to yeah, I love that. Me being a mom now, like it's all that comes into play. Like I guess I was thinking about it, may have not thought about it the way you said it, but I was thinking about it. And even
Yeah.
when my son was born, people his daddy was just like, vaal kat dene, katti dene. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that is not even a topic of conversation here. Um,
Yeah.
and he loves his hair, he loves his little man buns and everything.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
exactly what you said, like it was always in the back of my head that it was a no-brainer, it was a no-brainer that my kid is going to be a Judewala kid, my girl is going to be growing out her hair. Like
Yeah.
it's not even a topic of conversation here.
Yeah.
Regardless of what my journey was to Siki again, that is so beautiful. So how has it been as a parent?
As a new dad, it's been it's been great. I think before you have a baby, a lot of people try to scare you. A lot of people try to say, "Oh, there's sleepless nights." And yes, there are indeed sleepless nights, but what you get in return is so much more. You're bringing life onto earth and you have the opportunity to grow with them. And I think man, now that I have a kid, it only makes me more attached to Sikhi and more of our history. Like when
Mhm.
Guru Gobind Singh Ji had to leave Anandpur Sahib, and when he was separated from the Chote Sahibzade, or when he sent his older Sahibzade into war, knowing they were going to die. I mean, how you love your kid. See, this is another concept in the West is your child is everything. But in Sikhi, you are a part of something bigger. So if you or your family are to be sacrificed for Sikhi, that is a worthy sacrifice. So I think my journey as a dad, though it's just beginning, I think it's been great. And I think the amount of emotional attachment and you love that you have for your kid really puts things into perspective in that when our bibiyan were wearing basically garlands of their babies when the Mughals would chop them up and say, you have to wear this as a form of humiliation. And even in those circumstances, they thanked Waheguru. I mean, it's the amount of inspiration that you get is eternal. And I think what you can gain from I think bringing life onto this earth, it's a beautiful thing. And I think aligning it with Sikhi just makes it that much more beautiful.
I love that. I love that. Well, I'm gonna end it off. So we started off with morning routines. What is your evening routine? I know it's probably changed now.
All right. Well, evening routine is bathe the baby, and swaddle him properly and tight, and give him milk, put him to bed, shower, and go to sleep. That is, and then wake up like an hour and a half later. Usually that's the routine. But yeah, it's morning and evening routines have been very inconsistent as of late. I was a lot better before the baby, and I am hoping to get back there. But for now, I'm just kind of enjoying the journey.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Prabhjot. This was amazing. Was there anything else you would like to share with the audience?
No, I think this is well, thank you to you. Thank you for having this podcast. You provide a very important platform, and I think more voices need to come forward and contribute to the Panth in the way that they can. And uh, I'm hoping that on this journey we continue to find ways that we can contribute and you know pay true homage to our history and who we are as people.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.